Sometimes the simplest ideas are the most perfect. What if a segment of the French Revolution was told in the film noir style? And also with probably no regard for historical accuracy, but I don't care. The Reign of Terror, also titled The Black Book, follows a plot to overthrow Maximilien Robespierre, the tyrannical leader of the Committee of Public Safety, aka the guy who orders executions, who was a key figure in the Reign of Terror. For anyone unfamiliar, let's define a couple terms before we jump in. France is a country, and film noir is a style of crime film which emerged in the United States in the early 40s, taking influence from styles like poetic realism and German expressionism. Stylistically, it featured chiaroscuro lighting, which is essentially shadowy and high-contrast black and white photography, which provides a sense of tension and drama in the frame. Stories tended to run more cynical and downbeat, often playing with moral ambiguity, femme fatales, things like that. And if you're familiar with film noir, you will probably also associate it with suits, fedoras, smoking, nefarious plots, hard-boiled detectives, murder mystery, so on and so forth. And you know what fits the setting of film noir pretty excellently? The French Revolution, as it turns out. The lighting style fits the mystery and the secrecy of the plot to overthrow Robespierre. Charles is basically the detective throughout, investigating this nefarious plot. We have scenes in jail, scenes in seedy locations, all this fun stuff. And I think the film benefits quite a bit from pure novelty, the pure fun of seeing this kind of reskinned version of this giant of a style. Plus, I always think it's kind of fun to see these historical movies set in a country with another language, but done with English accented actors, like The Death of Stalin or something like that. But this movie is more than just a gimmick. There is genuinely great tension at points, and that is primarily through a great understanding of when to let the audience stew in uncertainty and when to release them from it. The script has some great lines in it.
I always believe in giving a man enough rope.
I enjoy a few performances quite a bit, especially Robespierre, Fouché, and Saint-Just. But the consensus, understandably, is that the best feature of the film is the cinematography by John Alton. John Alton was a Hungarian-born cinematographer, best known for his work in film noir, although he would eventually win an Oscar for a non-noir film, An American in Paris. Additionally, he wrote what is still an incredibly useful work on cinematography and lighting called Painting with Light. I think one of the most instructive qualities of his work here, and the gaffers too, but they're not credited if they are as one, is the way lighting interacts with production design. The DOP and production designer, Edward L. Ilou, if that's how that's pronounced, are part of a triumvirate with the director, Anthony Mann, to determine the overall aesthetic of the film. The director brings the vision, the production designer is responsible for creating the physical environment, and the DOP is responsible for how to capture that physical environment. Now, this is a fairly mundane film with the 2025 equivalent of a $10 million budget, so there was some money going into it, but many of the sets are still fairly minimal, exception of like Madeline's bedroom or whatever, which is very lavish. So first I would just want to do a quick compare and contrast between the high contrast lighting style and perhaps a more normal one. So let's compare two of Anthony Mann's works, this one and The Tin Star. In The Tin Star, we have these interior sequences, which I love the look of. I think they're lit really well. The shadow in the room has a nice texture to it and a sort of gradient coming down from the ceiling. But it's fairly gentle and it's welcoming if slightly morose. Now this film has the film noir look. Take this scene where we have a clear distinction between an open, allegedly carefree location and some mystery lying behind it. This intense style creates a sense of drama, especially in this scene, which specifically contains intrigue and uncertainty. This scene is also a perfect example of the collaboration between production design and photography. The blinds are a pretty innocuous choice, but they're used to create a visual texture to create a more interesting frame. Let's back up a little further and look at the first real scene of the film. Just look at the simplicity of this set. There's one door with bars, and that's about it. Besides, of course, the desk and the person in the middle. But those two diagonal light sources outside the door, out of sight, are used to create this small, visually interesting pattern right on the floor, and also essentially creating extra windows and light fixtures within the room, just through the use of one door. Here's Robespierre's Cave of Operations. Those props in the back are just muskets with bayonets, but the harsh shadows are essentially doubling them up, making them, at least to me, appear a little more sinister and unusual, almost like a sort of pitchfork or trident or something. They look more numerous and more intimidating, and it adds to the interest of the frame, again, just by utilizing what's in the production design already. Not a complex setup, once again, although there is certainly more stuff, but Alton is using a fairly simple idea and making it more visually striking through lighting. Spoilers for this one. The last example, probably my favorite overall.
Not in the desk. It's got to be in this room.
Two things to note here. First is the extreme contrast, literally blacking out the entire set behind them for the beautiful emphasis on this table right here. Second, we see here another technique of elevating a simple set with lighting. In context, we know the Black Book is an extremely important element for the film. And if you just saw the set out of context, a simple room filled with soulless black books, that by itself would be pretty underwhelming. But using that big dramatic lighting change to illuminate the abundance of, essentially identical objects for what they're looking for, I think is a great touch, extremely dramatically effective. So to me, this is my favorite quality of a film I already enjoy. The way the photography takes what could be a pretty crude style and elevates it with great choices. Combine that with the beautiful idea, the enthusiastic execution, the tension, and this is one of the more fun noir experiences I have ever had.